Hi everyone, Dave here. Hope you're good. Yet another amazing midwinter's day. Perfectly still, not a breath of wind. Quite cold today, but this benign winter continues apace. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about was the changing narrative and the changing situation, and how that may affect our perception of things, because things may become more complex for us, more confusing. I'm going to try and explain why. So I'm going to talk about the situation in Russia, of which I don't know much about, and also the economy. Right, so as you know, my channel is about watching society, watching people, trying to understand, who we are, with the underpinning message that who we are is we are individuals and we shape our own society. So I watch people and comment on society and talk about how it's the individual who has the power to shape society in a positive or negative direction. So I'm not so much into the geopolitical stuff, although I am interested in things, but it's not my area of focus really. But why I want to talk about it is because there is quite clearly now a complete demolition of the COVID narrative in certain countries. Certainly in the UK, well, England, to a lesser extent Scotland and Wales, and very interestingly Ireland as well, which really, really amazes me, because there appears to have been very, very little public opposition to the measures in Ireland, yet the measures are being removed. In other countries, there is the situation is completely different. Australia, certain parts of Canada, many European countries where the totalitarianism appears to have really got into society, and it may be more difficult for them to extricate themselves. Morning. But ultimately, I think that the COVID story and the COVID narrative is going to collapse around the world. But what are we starting to see? And I really mean that. I honestly think that I can see it already in this country, that the media now have almost completely just moved away from it entirely. And I think there's something at play here that's quite obvious to me, and I know probably quite a lot of you will agree with it. And I'm not going to get into the details of what may or may not be going on, because I don't know. What I want to talk about is how our perceptions, how are we going to deal with how are we going to shape our perceptions? The powers that be, the dark forces, the deep state, the mainstream media, without a shadow of a doubt in my mind, have been shocked and surprised at the level of resistance that they've encountered. We, to a large extent, have shown them who's boss. However, the most important thing to control if you want power is to control the story, control the narrative. Everything else stems from that. It's more important than the accumulation of money, more important than the accumulation of land. Control the narrative, you control everything. And they, to a large extent, with the complicity of the mainstream media and the social media companies, still do. So they have the power to affect perceptions. Now, I talked about Ukraine and Russia. Isn't it really, really interesting that after 2 years where finally the attention has pivoted away from COVID and associated measures, very, very rapidly, very suddenly, that we're now hearing a lot more about the situation, or alleged situation, in Ukraine with the Russians. Now, here's a helicopter coming overhead here. Really low actually, that. Anyway, maybe it's flying over to Ukraine, eh? Here's what I want to say. Why is it that one fear-based narrative has been replaced by another instantaneously? Why? And more to the point, how on earth are any of us ever going to get to the truth of what may or may not be going on out there in Ukraine. Because with the COVID situation, or should I say the tyrannical lockdown, jab, mask situation, we've been able to discern truth, we've been able to expose lies. And why is that? Well, because the policies are playing out right before our eyes. We can see the changes in people's behaviour. We can see how society's been altered. You only have to step out your front door and you can see the truth and you can see the lies. We can see it in our own lives, using our own eyes and ears. And that's what I always try to do when I make these videos. I always try to return to what can I see and what can I hear. Not really that interested in, well, obviously I'm interested in what other people say, but in terms of forming my own perceptions, I take other people's opinions into account quite clearly. But I'll always return to what can I see and hear in my own life, because that's my truth, innit? That can only be my truth. How on earth are any of us going to know what the truth is with the situation with Russia and Ukraine? I can say with a degree of certainty and a complete absence of doubt, actually, that what the mainstream media says is going on over there will be getting spun, will be an out and out lie, because everything else that they talk about is pure, unadulterated lies. They do not know how to tell even a grain of truth. Probably most of you would agree with that. I'm sure we'll also see the usual censoring and filtering of information on social media platforms. So how do we let that affect us? Because it's a situation where it's more difficult to understand our perceptions. You know, it's not like a case where right now I can come out here and do a video and I can show you. You know, I could be in a shop. I say, look at all these wearing masks. Look at these zombies here, brainwashed. You know, I could show you, and they're doing it all, and that's why it's so powerful. Because people are showing, they're creating their own content, and they're showing exactly what is going on in the ground, how these measures are affecting people's lives. We're not going to be able to have that now, are we? We're going to be relying entirely on what the official narrative is. But here's the point, we don't have to, do we? We don't have to rely on that. We're not going to be able to understand in anywhere near the same degree what is really going on as we've been able to in the last couple of years. So that's up to us how we process that, isn't it? And do we let it become a thing in our lives? Do we because it'll be the same. Fear, fear, fear. This is going to happen. It's already starting. Or do we just carry on? Carry on living our own lives in our own worlds and imparting our own values. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the economy. I've thought for a while there's going to be a stock market crash and an economic meltdown. Is that starting? No. You know, for those who have been paying attention to the wider picture, the bigger picture, and who may be pulling the strings and what their aims are, it'll come as no surprise if this does happen. The conditions, I'm no economist, I'm really not, but the conditions seem ripe as well. You know, if you're printing infinite amounts of money, rampant inflation, and you have so many doubts and so much uncertainty, what's going to happen? You know, you tie that in with the quite clearly stated objectives of various organisations about how they want to fundamentally change society. It all seems to make sense. But here's the thing about the economy, it's very abstract. Again, probably the most difficult job in the world is to be an economist, to predict what's going to happen, because the economy is so complex. And I think the way that a lot of us have shifted the way we look about politics, maybe a lot of us have changed the way we look at the economy as well. And it's really, really interesting to to take a step back and to reorientate how we really see these huge concepts in the world and what they really are, and do they work for us or not. And so we have a situation now where we're going to go from something where we can we can really discern and understand and see it in our own lives, to something quite abstract going on in the background. What's the economic fallout going to be of the last measures imposed in the last 2 years, what they're going to try and do, and the situation in Russia, where we're not really, in my opinion, not going to be able to find out what the truth of the matter is. And I think as well, it shows that this video is neither positive or negative. I'm just saying it as I see it. It shows how we need to be on guard, that, because whilst I said at the start of the video we've rattled their cage, and we have, undoubtedly, we have, I think it's quite clear that under the guise of a virus, a global totalitarian takeover was planned and has been successfully implemented to some degree in some countries. But there are more strings to their bow than just that. And that's what we need to be aware of. But at the same time, realise that as long as we stand up for the same values, as long as we refuse to be cowed and intimidated by fear, as long as we don't allow ourselves to be enslaved by propaganda, as long as we just carry on living free, liberated lives based on individual autonomy and closely discerned values, then nobody has any power over us. So I return to the point I made right at the start of the video. No matter what comes in the next few months, we are still the ones who dictate the direction of our society. It's us, it's nobody else. So, gone off on a little bit of a different tangent to normal on this video by bringing in, aspects such as the economy and, as I say, geopolitical situations that may or may not exist, but with the intention to try to bring it back to how we perceiving things that may or may not exist, and how much are we going to allow ourselves to be preoccupied with what the worst possible consequences may be of situations that may play out in the next few months. So, or whether those worst consequences won't actually translate into reality. Anyway, please do let me know your thoughts on this. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my walk. Please don't forget to subscribe, and I'll speak to you all soon. Bye bye.